Hi, y'all. Good afternoon or good morning. We're going to get started in just 1 minute, just letting people um, join us. I know people are still filtering in, so we'll give them a second before we get started. All right. Pulling up my notes. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. So, bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Native Organizers Alliance second webinar in partnership with the 100 Years of Silence Project. My name is Jennifer Fairbanks. I'm an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation here in Minnesota, and I'm the Communications Director for Native Organizers Alliance. And we are so happy to have everyone join us today for part 2 of this discussion around healing from past historical traumas. We'll have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A feature, not the chat box. And we have NOA's social media and digital coordinator, Shay, on here as well to help us with tech and to watch for question submissions. Shay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Sayo Nagad. My name is Shay Vassar. I am a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, currently based in Norman, Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here to support this webinar and just to hear from Sean and Angela. So
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. So if you're not familiar with Native Organizers Alliance, we are a national Native nonprofit focused on driving policy change and protection of sacred places through organizing and advocacy work. And we are so excited to be partnering with the 100 Years of Silence Project for this webinar. The 100 Years of Silence Project is an initiative spearheaded by the Ute community of White Mesa in Utah. This project promotes healing and a legacy of endurance in commemoration of the 102nd anniversary of the Canyon Ute Incarceration of 1923. Reclaiming our narratives is so important and powerful work. So NOA is super honored again to be able to help amplify this project. In the first part of this series, our presenters took us through the history of the Canyon Ute incarceration and the lasting impacts it has had on the community there. So back again, this time to walk us through how this project is helping folks start the journey to healing and what's on their horizon. We're joined by Sean Ketchum and Angela Backa. So Sean is Ute Mountain Ute and Dene, and he is the project director of the 100 Years of Silence Project. Sean is a driving force in preserving Indigenous culture and fostering unity. His deep family ties to community elders provide a foundation of wisdom and respect, which he uses to guide his work. Sean's vision for the project is to reclaim cultural identity and rewrite misrepresented history. Angelo is Dene and Hopi, and he is a cultural activist, scholar, filmmaker, and professor at Rhode Island School of Design in the History, Philosophy, and Social Sciences Department. He serves on the Bears Ears National Monument Advisory Committee and formerly on the Reconciliation on Derogatory Place Names Committee appointed by former Secretary Deb Haaland. His work reflects a dedication to Indigenous research and Indigenous communities on equal and respectful terms and accurate representation. So once again, thank you all for joining us for part 2 of this webinar, and I will now turn it over to Sean and Angela. I'm super excited to continue this conversation with you all.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sean Ketchum. Thank you, Jennifer and Shay and Native Organizers Alliance for this opportunity to present to you guys what we've collected so far with 100 Years Silence Project. It's been a long time coming. We're looking forward to talking about the future and what we're currently doing within 100 Years of Silence Project.
Yad A, Angelo Baka Yanisha, Plashte Nishlankis Anibashis Chin, Twitachini Dashache, Nakai Dina Edashanella. My name is Angelo Baca. I'm Navajo and Hopi. I actually am um, from San Juan County and live and have grown up around Blanding and White Mesa, Utah. So a lot of the Ute folks involved in this project are neighbors, their friends, their family, their relatives. And it's a huge honor to be doing this work with them as a healing and reconciliation project because it's a long time coming and it's overdue, but it's also a very powerful vehicle for healing that historical trauma that a lot of people feel, especially in that little corner of Utah, as it has been continually targeted for discrimination and exclusion in its indigenous communities there. And so I think this is part of that unraveling of that trauma and healing for the next generation. And I'm super glad that it can be part of this next stage of the future, right? That it's the youth that are taking this up, that they're pushing it forward, and that they're doing all the good work that the previous generation could not do because of this 100 years of silence. No one wanted to speak up. No one wanted to say anything out of fear and safety for themselves and their well-being of their family, which is completely understandable. But now it's this generation that's picking up the baton and moving it forward and doing that work, that hard, difficult work to do the healing. So, as someone who's Navajo and Hopi and not Ute, but am still in the community, to me, this is another show of that solidarity, that intertribal coalition building and finding a way to coexist peacefully and meaningfully in the future. So I'm the communications director working with Sean, and we do a lot of this work inside and outside of San Juan County, Utah. So just thank you so much for hosting us and having us here today. Native Organizers Alliance. Thank you, Jennifer and Shay, and all the people who have been supporting us and giving us really great feedback from the first time. And hopefully we can answer some more questions today as well. Thank you.
Before I begin the slideshow, let me give you guys a little summary of what 100 Years of Silence Project is. Since time immemorial, the Anuch people lived in Bears Ears country of southeastern Utah. Resilient and resourceful, when the white settlers began flooding into the region in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Canyon Ute, who today are members of federally recognized Ute Tribe, continued to range freely on their ancestral lands just as they did for generations. Continued to range freely on their ancestral lands just as they did. They were among the last indigenous people on the continent of the United States to successfully resist settlement on reservations, even as the pressure to do so increased. That changed in the spring of 1923 when the federal agent and the posse of armed settlers incarcerated 79 women, children, and men in a barbed wire cage in Blanding, Utah. For 6 awful weeks, sometimes referred to as the Posey War, this event is known as the Canyon Ute Incarceration of 1923. By the time they were released, the older children had been shipped to boarding schools, and the Utes were forced to accept allotments, just the amount of the fraction of their traditional land. In 2023, 100 Years of Silence after the Canyon Ute Incarceration, the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe formed the 100 Years of Silence Project to commemorate the events of 1923 and to promote healing among tribal members. The project assembled a team of historians, artists, filmmakers, and traditional storytellers to begin openly discussing the incarceration from a Ute perspective for the first time in history, where we hosted community meetings, art exhibitions. The Ute people led the creation of the All Utes nonprofit 2025, an organization that fosters education, community, and historical understanding for Ute people and the broader public. The group celebrates and promotes All Ute people's rich culture and their spirit of resilience that endures to this day. And with that, I will begin our slideshow. This is our second webinar series. This logo right here is created from one of our 100 Years Silence Project artists here in White Mesa. Also, as we proceed into 100 years, the second 100 and the second year anniversary, which marks the second anniversary of 100 Years Silence Project and also the events surrounding 1923. We were in Salt Lake City at the Leonardo Museum. This was last year's photo. Prior to this year, we had a similar event, but at a smaller scale that took place during the NCECA conference, where we had a lot of support and funders that provided a good amount of donations for some of the community members from White Mesa, Utah. They were also participating and doing their own way of showing what the role of the Ute people are within the NCECA pottery formation and collections and the creations. There were over 6,000 people during the NCECA conference. We had the opportunity to have a discussion as well during one of the following mornings. Two Ute artists from White Mesa had their own creation and understood what it was like to have a pottery and how to go about the ways of having a pottery collection down there. And so they got to sit there and discuss and talk about their parts of what Ute pottery is and where it comes from and why it's important to know that this is being used in a way that is going to benefit the community down there and to show their art and to respect their pieces that they're doing and to get back to the ancestors, the Ute ancestral people. And so during one of those days, we were there, we were up there in the theater and we did a full future of what we're doing. We did the history, we did the archival, we did our rolling of what it is, 100 Years of Silence. And throughout that discussion, there was another event taking place downstairs for the Sika Pottery Convention. And from there, we would have them come up and listen in. And so throughout those 3 hours, people would come in, people would come out, and really get the full meaning of what 100 years is, as many of our former members of the Anuj board were there discussing their points and directions of what we're going to be doing within the next years and the following months from here. We had a lot of media coverage during that time. Salt Lake Tribune, Native America Calling, Native News Online, Grand Junction Daily Sentinel. Following that week after, we had Albuquerque Native News, Albuquerque podcasts get in touch with us, and we had over 1,500 people on that call that listened in, radio station. And then this was a lot of photos from last year. We currently have a lot of storytelling right now. You know, we've done over, I would say, 40 storytelling events, presenting everywhere, four corners. And we're gonna do some educational as well. During the NCECA, we did some partnering and networking over there with all the universities that were there focusing on the pottery section, but going around to the table booths, telling them what we're going to be doing, what we would like to do. A lot of them seem very interested in having us come present to their universities. And that's where we actually presented over at the Fort Lewis College, which is further down into these slideshows. And we have a web page. That web page is constantly getting updated. Our communications director, Angela Baca, always updates us on who's viewing, what on that web page and within our social media account on Instagram. It's very educational. There's a lot of information that our historian has collected, being told from the Ute perspective of the elders, from the community themselves. As always, we always ask for permission. We always ask if we are allowed to do this with consent, and they say yes, we are. And so that is our way of getting the information in a better way compared to 1923, where where the members of the town just took what they wanted from the community of the U people. There's a lot of information. We have the Leonardo recap, we have a timeline, we have Ute territories, chapters, Posey's Trail, where this year I took the kids out again. And we're going to keep doing this trail with the kids. This is our second attempt, our second anniversary. It was empowering. We had over 20 Ute children, and we had one of our former hand drummer powwow singers come out too. He sang a song up there. He did a round dance song. And I really honor those elders and the ancestors on that area of Comb Ridge, where Comb Wash is located below. This is before you drop down and get towards Bears Ears National Monument before you cross in between. And so up there they have two trails. The current trail is Posey's Trail. We're actually in the process with BLM to get that trail restoration going. And so that's an enjoyable process because we're going out onto the land. We're gonna be having the youth go out there as well with us. Gonna be having them mark certain areas and also elders to really detail what these plants mean to you people and how the Posey's Trail is important, not for the community, but as being Ute people and for the youth to see these different ways that can really inspire them one day to want to be in those positions that the people are in today. We have a lot of photos on our social media, across our social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is mainly the main focus. And that's where we've got in touch with a lot of these people, a lot of these other partnerships and collaborations we've done throughout the past 2 years. We have a lot of videos. We're also currently getting some videos created right now with Angelo and the rest of the team. There's stories through all those mentioned in those webinar series. And also within the press release, we have a lot of unique points of views, a lot of collections and quotes that we've collected so far that are still being developed, and all of that information will all be on the webpage at one point in the future. And this is our 100 years second anniversary at the Salt Lake Leonardo. This took place on March 28th. I'm standing there next to Malcolm Lehigh, who is the president for the On-Nooch board and also one of the members of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe Tribal Council and a representative for the White Mesa. And in these photos, you can see a lot of the community members, my grandma Betty Lehigh, my aunts, who is a Posey as well. And so those two right there are related to us. And Posey was also related to us. He was one of my many grandfathers on my youth side that I've really had that. I never met him, but I was always curious on who he was growing up. And we have a lot of our other grandmas. A lot of my other grandmas are there as well. Our community is very small in White Mesa, so everybody is related to everybody. And by that, we do a family tree of blood relations and family tie-ins. And so there's a lot of members here. It was interesting because we had a lot of people from the NCCA pottery come up that were interested, and they sat in and heard a lot of those powerful speeches and information that our former on-Ute members gave. A lot of male perspectives on each point of views. We had a bear dance member as well on the on-Ute board. We had our former council rep for White Mesa. We had Forrest Kutch as well, who is a very big influence on what we're doing, and we're hoping to see something change within the future. We also had Angelo Baca there talk about what his part of the project is and what he's hoping for. And we had a lot of the community members speak up and tell us new information that we've never heard. And so it was awesome to be able to be up there and to know that this information is being told in a very good way, as it is during this 102nd anniversary. There was a lot of preparation, a lot of work going into this, being able to get the agendas, get in the focus of what we're going to be doing. This was at the NCCA conference, as I mentioned earlier today. This is that portion of where we had Aldine Ketchum with his pottery Ute flute he created, and he's also able to play out of that flute. And then we had a couple others, but they weren't on the stage. You can see our former White Mesa representative right here, Malcolm, Forrest Kutch, and myself sitting there with our 100 Years of Silence Project hat and the medallion that one of our community members made for me last year with the logo as well. And these two ladies right here are other people that work within that pottery shop that was created in White Mesa. And so the experience of what they're telling, and we also have another individual over here, uh, another Lehigh. He was one of the ones that created plates and ceramics. And so he was really telling a lot about his experience, what he was looking forward to doing. And then this photo, this was during one of the second evenings where they had a guest speaker come in and discuss a lot about her hardships of going through art. As we relate it back to 100 Years Silence Project, you artists, their pieces really shared a lot of what they felt inside, what they wanted to tell, and what they wanted to speak on behalf of their family and their generational trauma, as we're all former descendants from those incarcerations of 1923 within Blanding, or used to be referred as Grayson back in the day. And following that next day, we were at the Urban Indian Center where we discussed the viewpoints, the PowerPoints that we shared with the previous webinar series. As we continue, we always use similar pieces, but we always change it for different audiences and different perspectives. We discuss what we're going to be doing within the future, where we're going to be going, what has archivists recently found, what is our final manuscript for 100 Years of Silence with our historian, where is our op-eds going to be going within the future with our journalists, and what other opportunities are out there within Salt Lake City, as it is a big community, and that is one of our focus points as well as we go into the future. This was an interesting event as well. A lot of the NCCA members also came to this that were registered for that event, and we have shirts right now that we're currently getting sold. Solos are something that is another way that we always give back to the community. Everything we collect or all the presentations and speaking at events we go, we always give back to the community for those. And so that was a really interesting way of giving back. We also have done many meetings there with the uh, Utah tribal leaders. We've been to every tribal leaders meeting, telling them and updating them what we've collected, what we would like to do within those next few years, where we're hoping to share and spread the word, as that's one of our big points as well. And we went over to the University of Utah Special Collections, where three members of my team collected a lot of information in regards of Allen Canyon, Ute people, and what we're trying to collect, as we need to see where we need to find those ways of setting up an archivist building, a history museum within White Mesa. As many of the community members have really emphasized, we would like something here to go and look at our history, to look at our family's tree, and to collect and to know that, our information is being kept in a safe place and that we don't have to travel so far to go and see our information. And so that's another opportunity for the youth that are currently in high school to be interested in being an archivist, to be interested in being a historian, to be able to say I can come home and work in my community as an archivist or a historian and have a collection that I can look through and store more information that's been gathered and collected. To always have those opportunities to have it given back to them. Fort Lewis College. This was April 2nd, 2025. This was a pretty first of many educational outreach presentations that we're going to be doing within 100 Years Silence Project. We presented to over about 30 to 50 people within that room. There was also a lot of educational people, a lot of um, people, just residents within Fort Lewis there. A lot of good research, a lot of information that our historian has collected, not just from research and data, but also stories from community members as he went around the community and came down. Every time we had a community meeting within the past 2 years, he collected information, he wrote quotes, he did audio recordings and had it manuscripted, did a lot of research. And our team is very well adapted, well professional within what they're doing. And so Jed presented, and then I also presented as well for 100 Years of Silence Project. We gave They gave a really good land acknowledgement on where they are and where they stand on within that college, and that was really interesting because everything you look on their webpage, on their website, they have that land acknowledgement and that recognition of the indigenous people within those areas, which is really neat to see. I'm hoping that with our college or high school or middle school educational speaking events, they acknowledge those land acknowledgements and the indigenous people within those areas that they are living and roaming on. There was a lot of good research, a lot of good comments, and also the students, they were shy, but at the end they came up and talked to me and asked me, how did you do this? Where did you do this? How were you able to be in this position that you were in? And a lot of good partnering and networking with others that wanted to give us the help to help us move further into the future, what we're doing. And this is our XR and VR experience. This is something that's very exciting for the community down there in White Mesa. They all raised their hands during the last community meeting on, is this something you guys would like to do or see? Are you guys excited? And they were like, yes, we want to do this. A lot of them came up and talked with Angelo. And a lot of the others that were there, like, yeah, we'd like to help on something if there's anything you'd like us to help with. And I'm excited to see this because it's currently in development. And Angelo, if you'd like to discuss anything on that.
Yes, sure. So, the one really interesting aspect about this is there's only really a handful of these experiential reality or virtual reality experiences that are utilized in this way. I think the majority of that kind of technology is being employed in like video games or computer generated graphics or like complete immersion experiences. But we're trying to talk about having a little bit of what does that look like through an indigenous perspective? What can we do when we're in the driver's seat telling the story? So we were specifically looking right there where Sean has the cursor. That's the area in that general vicinity where the incarceration happened. It's in the middle of the town, right off of Main Street, right off of the highway. And that area right there is being focused on to give ourselves a little bit of an idea of what did it look like back then? Where were people being incarcerated at? What did this space look like even um, in early contact times? To think about human as well as non-human relatives and contact at that time. So we want to kind of repopulate that space in a digital environment with the original people the Ute folks that were there, as well as the flora and fauna. So thinking about like juniper trees and sagebrush and jackrabbits and red-tailed hawks, and really thinking about like what did the space really look like before it became colonized, settled, and essentially made into a, uh, a space that is a Western American space where our history doesn't get told past that point. So it's really important for us to have the storytelling reflect that experience. And originally, we were thinking about making a documentary film, which is, it's always an option, but this was a different way to get people at the site to actually experience where real human beings endured hardship. And women and children were incarcerated behind barbed wire fences while, local white settlers held guns on them and kept them in the middle of this town. And even if they could escape, they couldn't get far because they're literally surrounded by buildings and other settlers. So to think about that and put yourself in that place, in their shoes, and imagine what did it feel like? Was it hot? Was it cold? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Can you hear them speaking in the Ute language? Can you, feel a little bit of that sadness of being basically incarcerated against your will and you didn't do anything? It's not even, it's the most vulnerable population that's being held. It's the women and the children. It's a punishment for the rest of the indigenous population there. And so learning about it in a history book, watching it on a documentary film, it's not the same as being there and experiencing it yourself. And I think that's the kind of educational tool that we want to elevate to see how that feels and what that registers for people who are not only from the community and also are Blanding or White Mesa residents, but visitors, people from all over the world, especially during the times when they come through that space. They are from international spaces, countries, nations, cultures, languages, and this history doesn't get told. It doesn't even get told locally. So for them to like understand, oh, what is this, and experience this history being told from a native perspective, that's a different experience. And so we're really excited about that, and the fact that the community is behind it. I just think it speaks to their bravery and courage and their faith in us to do a good job to do that storytelling to the best of our ability. Yeah, so keep going. So how we're going to try to do this is thinking about a possible mobile view augmented reality piece, right? That we can overlay some digital objects in places and have like a projection digitally or some kind of um, uh, display of in an iPad or a screen that shows you certain places or certain things, like we're saying, both human and non-human representation in that space. All right, go on. So the idea is to kind of make it an interactive space that you can see both what is the hard parts of this, and also what is there versus what's in the past. And so we're doing a lot of research using archives, photos, thinking about where things are versus where they are now. And it's an interesting process because we're thinking in three-dimensional space all the time. There's like a lot of spatial mechanics that are happening with this. And I think that gets overlooked a lot. People favor books and historical records and documentary films way too much, which are really also Western tools. This puts front and center indigenous storytelling, perspectives, and oral traditions that have been handed down from generation to generation. Next slide. So to illustrate that, we have Malcolm Lehigh there, a representative from White Mesa, to also do some walkthroughs and talk about the space and like what it was like when he was a kid with his family, and how that space kind of was like a central gathering place, and still is, because a lot of business and trading was conducted there. So anytime that you come through the town, you actually have to pass this place, pass the spot. And so there's a lot of memories and occurrences and recollections that are being documented and um, uh, resurfaced. So anytime that we have elders, leaders, traditional knowledge holders come and talk about these stories or visit these places, there's always new stories that emerge, because sometimes you don't think about those things until you're in the place. And anyone who's ever been to a space where they have memories that are deep, it helps to be in that place to remember them. Next. So here in a lot of the photos that you see, especially with the incarceration photos, you'll see some of the old buildings that were there. And this is one of those buildings. It's the old bank. And this old bank in the 20s, it's in the background, a lot of the photographs. And you can see that that space of the incarceration is nearby. And so we're trying to think about ways to not just reclaim that space, but to have the narrative there be front and center and not take a back seat or be ignored at all. I think it's both educational and informative for people who want to see a different view of a history that they don't know about. It's been really surprising to us how many people in the county, and then in the counties next to us, and the towns next to us, and even in the state, don't even know about this history. And so we are really trying to get more people involved and make this narrative as an experience be, an emotionally impactful one, but also ultimately a positive experience. What we hope to achieve is taking people to this dark place in history and then bringing them back by saying, okay, you know what the Ute people have been through. Now you should understand this resilient contemporary Ute Mountain Ute community. You can go to White Mesa, to the Allen Canyon Ute community, and see how incredible their resilience is, how much their spirit is indomitable, that this didn't break them. They're actually stronger now than they've ever been, and they've reclaimed, their culture, their history, their bear dance, and their ceremonies, and they're moving forward with that, which to us is the important part of the story. That's about thinking of the next 100 years, right? Like, yeah, this happened 100 years ago, and it's terrible, and we should not forget that. And we're going to imprint this story onto you right now. But you need to think about the next 100 years. And what is your role going to be in that? Because you don't even have to be Ute. You can just be a local resident. You could be a visitor. You could be a historian, an academic, a storyteller yourself. But then how are you going to change the way that the story is being told? Next. So we're doing a lot of research. We're trying to figure out all the places and landmarks and areas that give us indication of where things were and what was experienced there. And as we said in the previous webinar, this was a space of difficulty, hardship, and sorrow. There had been a photograph that looked to be like someone who was covered with a blanket, and it was probably a body. And so people had to make their own little living space, a hogan in there. And so incarcerated behind this barbed wire, like Sean said before, locals were just kind of like throwing food over to feed people like they were animals. And so the mistreatment, the degradation, and the dehumanization is not something to lightly go over. We really want to impress upon people the fact that that attitude still also gets passed down as well as a story does for the next generation. And we want to interrupt that narrative for the next 100 years. Next. So here, I think this is that one right there. You can see there's someone laying down there that looks like it may be a body, but this is like the elders, the young people, the women. It's the vulnerable populations that always suffer the actions, um, the perceived actions by a few. And so we are really trying to unravel the dominant narrative that has been told in books by other people who are on the outside looking in. A lot of uh, historians and scholars and journalists, newspaper people, especially from that time, they really did exaggerate quite a bit. Salt Lake City Tribune was not especially kind and did not do a good job covering the Ute side of the experience. And so it's been helpful. We have a good team. Zach Podmore, who has written on the the water situation in the West with droughts in Lake Powell. He's an amazing journalist. He's helping us. Rogers from University of Utah, who's our historian, incredible editor um, at the publishing there and doing good work, trying to write these manuscripts and do the research with us and interview elders and doing it in a respectful way. We just have a really great team. Gina Pion, who's also a Spokane archivist. She understands what it is to be culturally sensitive and respectful to elders and to community. And so she's doing this delicate work going into these archives and special collections with us and giving people a lot of freedom to say what they're comfortable and not comfortable with in terms of like representation and showing and research and collecting all this data that can be really helpful for essentially all the areas of our team. Yeah, next. So this is you, Sean.
As I mentioned earlier, we took a lot of youth out there to the Posies Trail. This started as an idea, and one day we decided, let's try it. Let's take the youth out there, teach them about Posies Trail. And so this year I took them out again. There was more kids this time. There were 20 kids. We took them out there to the trail, walked up there, got to the ridge, looked off the ridge, had our hand drummer singer sing. We had our bushwhacker as well, our bushwhacker director who does a lot of youth programs within the Ute Tribe in White Mesa. And so we're currently in the process of doing more development and more ways to have the youth more involved within 100 years and Anuch, more tours, more out there on the land, taking care of the trees, the animals, and looking down and seeing where and knowing what the markings are behind trees and how we know that this is where Ute people once roamed within the lands of Bears Ears National Monument, San Juan County, LaSalle Mountain, and the surrounding regions, including Rainbow Bridge and those areas, as they are important to what makes us Ute people in Allen Canyon and by Mesa. And as we go into the future, we're hoping the youth pick up these careers, pick up these ideas, the goals, our dreams of what we're trying to do here for 100 years. Also, with our all new nonprofit that's getting created right now, and being in the position as a program coordinator for the nonprofit or project director or communications or artists or a historian or an archivist to know that they have somewhere to go when they finish school. They can come be an intern for these programs. They can be on the sidelines, listening, learning, watching how we move forward with our project of 100 years with Anuch, because these projects, they're carrying that torch further into the future, where we're going to be going, what we're going to be doing, and how it's always going back to the community and all these calls and all these discussions we've done. Everything's legally protected by the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. It's copyrighted and protected. So the information we provide to each of you on this call, it's always protected. It can't be shared unless you ask for our permission to share this information. And we go from there with the right steps taken to protect the community from people that may use information in a bad, negative way. And so that is something we always emphasize for every discussion presentation we do. We're coming up to almost 12. And if there's anything I missed on this, Angelo, please go ahead and carry that forward. If not, then we can move forward into some questions or anything. Also, as we're on this topic, I do remember that we also are going to be doing currently working with University of Utah folks. We have a team of scientists that will be coming down to do some work on the land. We're going to see if the land has been polluted and if there's anything wrong with why the animals are changing within the year. As a hunter, it's changing. We used to have game at certain times of the year, but they've moved earlier in the season. And so the science team is going to really look into everything, the land, the water, the trees, the plants, is really hopefully make them stay within our Ute territories of where our lands are as we go hunting and go to eventually be able to go out there farming and to have the cattle out there that we once had. And for there to be summer camps to bring the youth out to have them spend time out there camping, learning about how to go around game, collecting, harvesting plants to heal yourself. And so that's another thing that is some pretty exciting to do, and to also give thanks to the Mellon Foundation for that group has really given us this big chunk of funds to be where we are, to explore, to know what we're doing, and also to the Wildlands Foundation that has also given Angela Baca and his team and the myself this opportunity to be here and to make that community feel heard and to feel welcome with everything that we've been doing, and also to the Native American Alliance, the Native Alliance group as well, and all the other people that are out there, to the team, to the elders and the community members, and to the next 7 generations of people of Ute and every descendant of indigenous people. To, take care of these lands in a very good way as we move forward into the future.
Yeah, I'm just dropping some links in the chat too for folks. I think it's been part of their questions to kind of direct towards different resources here, and also put in there a little bit about protection of indigenous intellectual property, especially during this age of AI. So we're not really just thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future, and we're being proactive to protect our stories, our images, our cultural and ceremonial knowledge. So that may not resonate with everyone that's on the call, but we, like Indigenous peoples mostly, are always doing or thinking about this holistically, past, present, and future. So it's all related, and it all matters in our project. And I think that's one of the defining features, is thinking about this not just, as 100 years of silence, but then what does the next 100 years look like, and then the next 100 years, and thinking about the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Y'all have been so busy since we last met. And it's so good to see you out in the community and sharing this project and the findings and connecting with the youth. I think that's so important to give them an idea of how they could possibly continue their involvement, once they're older, how they can, continue to contribute as well. And I think this project itself, it's so important because words hold a lot of power, and it's about taking back that power, and it's about giving back to the community in a way that's really meaningful. And it's also about data sovereignty, right? So collecting these stories and these pieces of our history and making sure that it's done in a good way, in a respectful way. Because like, you've said, Angela and Sean, we're so used to having things kind of taken from us or stolen from us in a way that is harmful to our communities. And so I just love this work that you all are doing. And I just want to thank you both for this presentation. And we really appreciate us at Native Organizers Alliance, appreciate you continuing to have this conversation with us and including us. So yeah, we're going to open it up now to to questions. So Shay, do you have some questions for us that you've pulled out?
Yes. I think this is a really good question. What kinds of support can non-native people give to help this project, especially those of us from non-Western states?
I would say observing how the community or, the tribal council leadership is taking different perspectives on concepts and what's going on within the world, and just being able to offer a donation, an in-kind donation of funds or gifts to the community, or that's another way that people from the outside within our program have really given back to us in a ways like, here's a in-kind donation of X amount of money or shirts or gifts for your next community meeting or something. So that's just another way that they've helped us really get us in touch with other people that they're connected with that can help us with something to do or something along those lines. Angela?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Mellon Foundation did a really great job in getting us started, and now we want to continue with this second phase of the project. So we're really hoping that folks like yourselves can contribute and support us financially and with just general demand for this type of programming and continuation of this storytelling. Because as we know right now in this moment, diversity, equity, and inclusion is under attack everywhere, and it's threatened in institutions of knowledge and colleges, universities. But it's not going to be too far now where Native communities that are telling their own stories will also be seen as a threat to the status quo of the dominant narrative, right, of Western settlement. And so that's going to be a target soon as well. So you have to keep also speaking out for us. You also have to keep fighting for us to be in these spaces, even if you're not Native. But of course, it does help us to complete and have a better experience in disseminating this information, doing these educational webinars and lectures and visits, which Sean does. He goes to powwows and museums and churches and places that you and I don't want to go because he's willing to do the work, and he wants to make bridges and cross divides and reach people, which is great. And so he needs that funding for doing that, and I need that funding to complete this project. We only have enough to go halfway. We need more to complete it. And especially if we can go beyond the space, which we're hoping to do, so to bring that experience to you wherever you're at. So we're really thinking about that to keep the 100 years of silence going on, and hopefully have that through the support of Sean's new nonprofit, Anuche. It's ANUCHE, Anuche, which is the original name. It's Ute, right? So everybody keeps saying the name that white settlers give us when we're our tribes, and so it's them taking back their name again. And so Sean and his group, his organization, his nonprofit, they're focused on the needs of the community. Whatever they need, hopefully Anuche can help provide that other programs or people can't. And so that's what we're thinking about doing, is like Sean saying, bring up the young people, integrate them into our programming, teach them about like archiving and documentation and technology. Like we really want our other new storytellers to come up in this too. We want to bring them up with us. So, that's part of the long-term view of what we want to accomplish with 100 years.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah. Drop the link for the donation in the chat. People are asking for that. Yeah. So that we can help fund and support this project. Because yeah, we want to see you guys thrive and continue. It's so important. I think we might have time for maybe 2 more questions. Shay, do you have another question?
Yeah, the other one I was thinking, that is really good. Let me find it again. Sorry. Someone said, I'm not an Indigenous person, but I've been feeling grief pouring out of me. When people experience what you are offering, will you have emotional support available for any individuals who are traumatized or maybe re-traumatized? Basically, yeah, like, in our field and doing these narratives, how for the healing process, like what does that look like, Sean, especially since you are out in this community and in your community doing a lot of this heart work, right? Do you have people that are also kind of like grieving or re-grieving?
Personally, I have lost, let's say, about 7 to 9 relatives prior to being hired 2 years ago and up to now. I haven't lost any relatives this year, so I'm pretty glad that's going well. But the way I see it is that they're up there watching you, all your relatives. There's a picture from the last webinar we did where we're all standing there. And in that picture, I imagine, the past relatives or leaderships standing in those spaces where we're not tightly together, but you could just imagine them all standing there with you. You could think it being looking to your right or to your left. They're all right there standing beside you and behind you. And so within the community, we always have prayer, the Indigenous Ute prayer done prior to doing a community meeting. And then we always conclude with a thank you for everybody coming here. It's hard to tell this information, but as your project director, I'm always gonna make sure I take care of you each within this and move forward with the future. And that's one of their ways of, I'm picking you guys up. I'm gonna take care of you. You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, the sharing has been both healing and difficult. The artists who make the work have told stories about having to kind of learn it at the same time as other elders because they also didn't get told what was happening. And yeah, that's an interesting experience to see intergenerational trauma happening simultaneously. But when we do our XR experience, we're really hoping that part of the completion of this circle, Sean has a vision of healing that the town, the community, the state, all the leadership can get together and just acknowledge what happened and have some kind of prayer or ceremony to get past that moment of pain. And then, hopefully we can direct people to participate in joining up with the celebrations in White Mesa with their powwow and their bear dance, which are celebratory ceremonies, and that's an example of resilience. And so, whereas we get expected to participate in American culture and dominant society, there is no expectation for them to come and participate in ours. But they're generous enough to open that invitation past that XR experience and for them to go learn more. Like this is just the stepping stones, the doorway for them to educate themselves and become better neighbors.
Absolutely. Yeah. The VR aspect of the project is so groundbreaking because it's kind of forcing that perspective, making people think of like what was here before the Ace hardware store or the Subway store, right? really, really forcing that new perspective on them and using that new technology in a way that I don't think has been done before. So that aspect of the project I'm really excited about, and I would love to be able to experience it myself. I think it'd be so powerful and moving to be able to, like, place myself even as an Indigenous woman in that spot, and see that history for myself. Because yeah, it's a lot different reading about it and seeing it in pictures and history books. But to be standing there where relatives have stood, I think is going to be an amazing experience for folks. So, but yeah, we are at time. So thank you to Sean and Angelo. This has been so amazing to be able to be part of this and to help amplify this work. NOA is so honored once again to be part of this conversation. And all of you on the call, if you are looking to help or to engage in any way, you can visit 100yearsofsilence.com for more information. And we will be sending out the recording of this webinar and more information within that email of how you can get in touch with both Sean and Angelo. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Shay, for helping with tech and questions. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you all have a good day.
Oh, by the way, I put the link in the for the donation page. So
Awesome.
if you guys do make any donations, make sure it goes to Onuch or Onuch and then, hyphen 100 Years of Silence webinar series part 2 with Native Alliance.
Okay,
And
awesome. Yeah, we will make sure to include that information in the email too that we send after this. But thank you both so much. All right. Bye, y'all.
you